Welcome to Gold Coast Insider, where we bring you business insights, stories, opportunities and forecasts from movers and shakers across the Gold Coast. I'm your host, Estella Rodiguero. I'm CEO of Regional Development Australia Gold Coast. Welcome to the Gold Coast Insider podcast. Today's episode is all about the moments that matter the most, the critical first minutes directly after a medical emergency. Our guest today is Leah Harrison, a registered nurse with over 20 years' experience in emergency departments and a senior medical educator with LifeFlight Australia. Leah delivers LifeFlight's First Minutes Matters program, a free community trauma training initiative empowering everyday people with the skills and the confidence to act before help arrives. We'll talk about Leah's journey in emergency care, the First Minutes Matters program, and why early action can make a life-saving difference for individuals, workplaces and communities. Would you know what to do if you came across an incident, accident or emergency? If not, then this podcast is for you, your friends and family. So don't forget to like, follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Gold Coast Insider podcast. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you.
Leah, let's start off talking about your journey into nursing and what led you to work in emergency departments for over 20 years.
Yeah, so I think I always was interested in healthcare from a young age. It's probably my brother's fault. He's and still is to this day, a critical care paramedic, and he's a bit older than me. So when he was training, he was using me as his patient and mannequin to practice on and learn things. So from a very young age, I was learning about advanced first aid care and advanced medical care and trauma. So it was just something I sort of fell naturally into. And then I did nursing instead of paramedicine. And then, but yeah, knew I always wanted to be an emergency in that front end where people are coming in and experiencing usually the worst days of their lives.
Do you ever get used to it?
You build up a tolerance for it. Like you have to have a good mindset and you have to have very good resilience to work in an emergency department for a very long time. But there's always, especially certain people and especially certain cases and especially if it involves children and things like that, that will always, sit with you for years to come.
So how has your experience in hospital prepared you for your current role as a senior medical educator for LifeFlight?
Yeah, so as part of my job in emergencies, I always worked on the floor, but I also did a lot of education for other nurses. So once I became more senior, I did a lot of education for young nurses coming through, whether it just be on the floor, but also running their basic life support and advanced life support programs and things like that. So education through the hospital has always been a big component of my job as well. So it's sort of just transitioned now that it's changed to community training.
So what does your role as senior medical educator with LifeFlight Australia involve?
Yeah, so it looks like from a day-to-day point of view, it's me going out and teaching these courses. However, in the background, we have other medical educators as well. So I also manage them. And it also looks at we're constantly trying to evolve and develop our course to make sure it does meet the needs of what community needs and community wants. So it would be if you did a course and then you come back and did it in 2 years' time, it might look different. And that's, that comes down to me making sure courses are updated and relevant to ongoing needs.
Yeah, and current to the situations. And I guess as things change, the situations change. And I think a really good indication of that is e-bikes. 2 years ago, there wasn't e-bikes. So we now have to keep changing so staying updated on how to, whether you're the first person to come across an incident is really important, isn't it?
And we even look at road safety and things so looking at things like electric cars and difference in those sort of things and, just having that perception of, because, 10 or 20 years ago, we didn't need to worry about that either. It was all combustion engines. So we've got a lot of different hazards and risks out there at the moment.
That's true. So we'll take a step back. Can you give us a bit of an overview of LifeFlight and its mission?
Yep. So everybody knows, I think, LifeFlight is the helicopters in the sky. a lot of people call us Care Flight. We changed to LifeFlight a while ago, but that's still okay. But so everyone sort of knows that side, the helicopter rescue service. So if you have a medical emergency or trauma, that they're the ones that are going to come to you. But there's
Mm,
also this big community side as well, and that's where we fall in. So about building relationships with community and trying to engage with community to build stronger communities and more resilient communities.
mm,
So, because it's really important to us that when people having these accidents and things like that, there's still gonna be a time delay for people
mm.
to get there, whether it's ambulance, life flight, there's still that time delay, and it's so critical for people to know what to do in those situations. So that's where the community side comes in.
And I know from my perspective, I do a lot of hiking. I go out in the bush hiking. In the back of my head, I'm always thinking, oh, thank God there's life flight if I ever need it. I love that we're so lucky in Australia that we've got access to that and so fortunate. So Leah, why are the first minutes after an accident or an incident or a medical emergency so critical?
Yeah, I think it's really important that people know what to do in those minutes, because there's some accidents where if you're waiting 10 or 20 minutes for an ambulance to come, and there might not be a lot for people to do, and it might not really change that person's outcome in that 10 or 20 minutes if not a lot is done. But there's certainly certain situations where if there's people that don't step in and do things in that first 5, 10, 20 minutes while we're waiting for help to arrive, it really can change the outcome of that person. It can either be that that person survives as a person not surviving,
Mhm,
or they just have a much better long-term outcome. So things like that, bleeding is one of the most important sort of things that we talk about in our course. If you come across somebody and they're critically bleeding, we only have a certain amount of blood volume. So if they're bleeding and the ambulance is 5 or 10 minutes away, or life flight, whoever's coming, if we don't stop that bleeding, unfortunately that person could die or have a much worse outcome, because we know the more blood we lose, the harder the recovery is,
mm.
and usually the more long-term effects that they might have from that recovery. So being able to just knowing how to stop a traumatic bleed. So things like, and I don't want people to think it's all gruesome. It's not all gruesome what we do, but things like, if you were to come across like a traumatic amputation that might happen, and they do happen on the roads in motorbike accidents and things like that, or, just down the Gold Coast, you could be out surfing and like there could be a propeller injury or a shark bite and somebody's got an arterial bleed that's happening. So knowing how to stop that while we're waiting for ambulance to get there.
So so the impact on that knowledge and what you can do in those first minutes really can make a difference of life or death. Is that the case? On
Yeah,
some occasions, I guess, yeah.
yeah. And there's certainly patients that are out there, and there's patients that we've had lifelike stories on that there's they've had good outcomes, and LifeFlight's done an amazing job and the receiving hospitals have done amazing jobs. But there's been times where if the bystanders hadn't stepped in and done what they've done, the person wouldn't have even survived until the paramedics or LifeFlight got there.
Amazing. Yeah.
So for some patients, especially bleeding,
Mhm.
especially if people are unconscious and they can't manage their own airway, so they can't hold their head up, so they're not breathing well, and obviously people that are in cardiac arrest that need immediate CPR. Those sort of 3 things probably are the main ones where if bystanders don't step in, the outcome's usually never gonna be great.
I know, I did one of your courses, absolutely brilliant, but one of the things that I was really happy about was physically being able to use a defibrillator and being able to see how to do that and when I would need to do that, because you now see them in areas on the side of roads, defibrillators, I see them when I'm hiking sometimes, they're out there,
Yeah.
but I've never touched one, never opened one, never had anything to do with it. So whilst it's great to know they're there, to actually put it into practice and to see how it worked was really invaluable.
Yeah, because I think, like, people know what they sort of do in the back of their
Mm.
mind, but they're still that scary object.
Yeah,
They're that scary object. If you don't know how to use it, you've never had any training,
yeah.
they're a bit sort of scared to think, "Oh, like, what if I do it wrong?" And, like, you would have experienced pretty easy devices. They do, once you get it open, and they pretty much talk you through the whole thing. So it's good for people to just be able to do that in the course and see, actually, these are pretty easy. I could open this up and just follow the instructions and do what the machine's telling me.
And I think the other thing I loved about the course, it was really hands-on. Like, we had to bandage, we had to attend, we had to splint, we had to, use the defibrillators in the course. So it was a really hands-on course. It wasn't just all, let's sit down and listen to someone tell us what to do. And I think that was the biggest empowerment takeaway
Yeah.
for me. But
Yeah.
let's get to that course too. So let's talk about, what is the First Minutes Matter program and why was it created? Let's start there because I've jumped ahead.
So it was actually created by one of the critical care doctors in Brisbane a few years ago that worked for LifeFlight.
Mm.
And the reason he created it was basically off the things we've been talking about. He'd gone to multiple cases where patients had either unfortunately died that probably could have survived, or that had really poor outcomes because people hadn't been either brave enough or just didn't have the knowledge of what to do in that situation. And I think we've gone into that, we're in that world environment. People won't go do these courses if they have to pay for them unless they really need them for work or things like that. So he wanted to create like a course that was free, so it's accessible to everybody, that where we come to people instead of you having to always come to us. So like, we'll go out to properties, we'll go to community clubs, things like that. And that is actually really user friendly for everyone.
Mm.
So, because part of it is like, we do all the hands-on kind of things. However, it is a little bit of a choose your own adventure when you get to a course. So like, we've had some people that are 90 or 92 come to our course, and they've been like, I don't think I could get down on the ground and do the CPR for 2 minutes. But they know that if they had to, they just want to see it and they want to do it, and they have a little practice on the table or something like that, knowing that if it happened in real life, yes, I would be able to, their own adrenaline would get them down onto the ground and make them do it. But it's not you have to do everything, but like, so people can do those practical things as much as they're capable of and as much as they're comfortable with. So I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, I agree. So what does a typical First Minutes Matter workshop look like?
Yeah, so currently, like, if people come to our general public course, we have multiple topics. So we look at roadside safety, or just safety at an accident scene. So whether that be at the roadside, might be at a property, might be at home. And so we look at things that sometimes people have just made mistakes because they've been panicked or stressed, and then got themselves or somebody else injured. So we just look at real safety things to look at before we rush into a situation. And then we break it down into main topics. So we look at major burns,
Right?
major kind of bleeding, snake bites, because everyone wants to know about that,
We all need.
choking and anaphylaxis. So we
Oh,
do like little
that was an
airway.
interesting one for me because
Yep.
it's changed. The
Yeah.
responses changes, don't they? But keep going, yeah.
And again, choking's one of those things that, you don't have 10 minutes or 15 minutes to wait for somebody to get there. You need to be able to act. We'll do stroke and seizures and then CPR and AEDs. And we like to follow it up at the end with some little scenarios for people to just culminate their knowledge.
Hmm. So what's is the typical size class that you would like to work with, or, workshop, I should say?
Yeah, we like to try and keep the groups reasonably small. So somewhere in like the, 15 to 20 numbers is great. Like, we'll do less, obviously, because when you go to small towns, you might not have a big group, or if you're businesses, you might only have a small room. So we might have 8 to 10, and that's fine. We try and keep it under 20, so that way we can actually have a fairly personal kind of feel with the people that have come to the course, that we have enough time for everyone to have a practice and feel comfortable and ask questions. Because if you get it more than that, like, you sort of just lose that a little bit. It comes a little bit more a lecture, and we don't want that to happen. And so if companies or places have, say 40 or 50 people that they say want to get done, we'll try and organise 2 or 3 days with them, rather than try and do 50 people in one day, just to try and make it that they have plenty of times to practice. Or the other thing we've done sometimes with bigger groups, like we've had one at the Gold Coast where we've had a bit over 40 people. So we sent 2 educators. So when we were talking, it was just one of us talking, but when we were doing the skills, we had 2 of us going around and helping people. So that way they still felt like they had a good amount of time to practice things.
Such a good opportunity for businesses to get involved, isn't it? How has regional and rural communities responded to the training so far?
We've actually had really excellent feedback. Like so that people give feedback to our courses, and their feedback has been excellent. I think for us, they see the main point of difference for any course that they've done before is they love the fact that everyone's a really experienced educator.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, you've done my intro, but we've got two other nurses that do courses. And again, they've both got more than 20 years of experience. And then we've got a paramedic that also does some courses.
Mhm.
And he's had more than a decade in working in military as a
Mhm.
combat medic, and then also paramedic on road. So
Wow.
we have educators that come with years of experience, and I think that's the thing that comes across for people, that they're like, "You can explain it so well in a way we can understand. You can give us real life stories, and if we have questions, we can actually get the answer from you because you have done it before. You've
Mm.
experienced it." So
So, why do you think it's important that people on the Gold Coast, in the Gold Coast region, do the First Minutes Matter course?
I think it's important for everyone, and
Yeah,
obviously, like, we're trying to get it over the
I
whole
know, I know.
state, but
I'm being
I think
parochial.
I think, I think for, like, places like the Gold Coast, so I think sometimes we can get a little bit relaxed,
Mm.
like in Gold Coast and Brisbane, places that's very metropolitan. I think we think things are so close that we can get a little bit relaxed. We can think, "Oh, well, the ambulance will be here in 10 minutes." But for some situations, like I said, 10 minutes is a very long time and can mean the difference between life and death.
Wow.
Or so, like, even if you're very close, it's still important to have these skills because that 10 minutes can make a big difference to that person. And then obviously for those people that are out in like Gold Coast hinterland and regional areas, obviously that difference becomes even bigger because their time they're going to be having to wait is longer again.
Mm.
So, but I think we can get, yeah, like I said, I think we can get a little bit relaxed when we live so close and we think help's not very far away. But sometimes 4 or 5 minutes makes a very big difference.
Wow. I know personally the sense of empowerment was really good. I know what to do if I come across something, whereas before I didn't. I don't even know. If someone else was there, I probably wouldn't have pulled up because I didn't want to impact negatively and not know what I'm doing. But now I have a purpose. I have a mission. I know that if something happens, I know what I need to do. So that sense of being able to actually have that knowledge is very, very powerful. It's very good. And it's even if it's for my granddaughters, it's
Yeah.
just so important to my life. So what are some of the reasons, I'm giving you mine, but what are some of the reasons that this course has resonated with people who have attended?
Yeah, I think just people because it's still fairly new. We have been doing it for a bit over 12 months, but it is
Mm.
still fairly new to Queenslanders. A lot of people don't know what it is, so they sort of come going not knowing what to expect. And they just walk away, and I think that what you said sums it up. They walk away feeling that they have truly been educated and truly been empowered, that I could actually step up and do something if I had to. Because like we'll talk about, and I talk about bleeding a lot, but we know that it's one of the biggest
Yeah.
causes of death in trauma. But like people, if they've done courses like first aid courses and stuff years ago, they might remember things like being, so strict about bandaging and things like that and think, I don't remember how to do that. I'm not going to do it. Where it's like, it really doesn't matter. Like, it's really about getting pressure on wounds and just controlling bleeding in any way that we can. It doesn't matter if it looks pretty. It doesn't matter what we might have to use the things that are on hand
Mhm.
because people think, oh, if especially in car accidents and things, if you don't have a first aid kit, I don't have any gear.
Mm.
It's like, what have you got in your car that you could use instead? So we talk about things like that. So I think it makes people go away going, oh, even in any situation, there's things I could do to help.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And also the updating. I think keeping updated with the changes is really, really important. I one of the things that struck me, I had done my first aid a lot of years ago, and I remember thinking that if you came across an accident, don't move them because of the neck or the back injury. But if they're bleeding, that's not necessarily the case anymore, is it?
We try never to move trauma
Mhm.
people too much and things like that. But like one of the big things people sometimes would die from is not having an open airway. So if people are like slumped in cars and things like that and not breathing, people have been historically, terrified to move people's
Yeah,
heads
absolutely.
to open the airway in case they
Yeah.
have a spinal fracture. And it's not that we're saying that's not a
Mm,
warranted kind of thing, but
mm,
however, if you can see that they're not actually breathing or they're not breathing very well, then if we don't open that airway so they can breathe well, it's unfortunately in a few minutes it's not going to matter whether
mm,
they've got a
mm,
spinal fracture. So we
mm.
teach people how to open that airway while maintaining as best spinal alignment as we can.
It's about looking for the first emergency that you can stop in a person at an accident, and it's looking for that. And as you said, bleeding's the first one. Airways would have to be another one as well, are they?
Yes, yeah. So,
Yeah.
like opening airways, like we do lots of things, but like if you talk to most medical people, a lot of will always be sort of like opening airways, stopping bleeding, and being able to do good quality compressions. If
Mm, mm,
they're probably
mhm.
the three big things that save people in
Yeah.
accidents and medical events.
So I'm sure there's a lot of real life examples of it, the positive impact that First Minutes Matter has made. Can you share any examples or stories of where that training has made a difference or can make a difference?
Yeah, so we haven't had too many people come back to us yet, but I do have, like, there was one lady and she came back to me, and I know her personally, and I'd done a course for a community group that they were in. And she said about 6 months later, her husband was choking, and she managed to actually dislodge what he was choking on, piece of meat. So I
Mm,
think he
mm,
needs to chew his food better. But anyway, she managed to dislodge it, and she said, "Oh, I don't really remember much," but she said, "I remember you just saying, 'Hit him between the shoulder blades as
mm,
hard as you can.'"
mm,
And he said it came out. So, like, and then there's a case in Toowoomba now. These people hadn't done First Minutes Matter, but again, it's just again about that knowing
the
what to
impact.
do.
Mm,
There was like a young fellow that had traumatic bleeding after a motorbike accident, and he's had a very long road to recovery, and it's been thanks to, LifeFlight and hospitals and rehab and
mm,
everything as well. However, he's one of those, if the first responders hadn't got there and stemmed his bleeding while waiting for the paramedics and LifeFlight to arrive, he would have unfortunately died at that roadside. But we haven't had too many come back to us yet, but hopefully, if people have done the course and have
mm,
some,
mm.
we'd love to always hear about it because it'd be great to
Yeah.
know that, we've helped them.
Yeah, but it's certainly an example of the impact of knowing what to do in the first few minutes that can make a difference as to whether a person survives or doesn't survive, and that's the takeaway here. But so I want to recap on what the actual workshop consists of for people so that they know what is being taught. So if you can go through that just again for them,
Yeah. Sorry. So, yeah, so we do safety at an accident scene
right?
and then burns, and then we have a bleeding topic
Yep,
and then snake bite.
yep,
And then we do airways, so we do choking and anaphylaxis. And then we do neurological, which covers strokes and seizures,
right,
febrile convulsions for
yep.
the little ones. And then we do CPR and AEDs, and then we round it all up with a couple of scenarios at the end.
Yeah. And safety at the scene is a big one, isn't it? It's all about, oncoming traffic, how you're placing yourself in danger as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and just like, mistakes people have unfortunately made that might have hurt themselves. There's also just some general road safety that people aren't even aware about. So, like, one of the things we talk about is fallen power lines,
Oh, yeah.
in
Yeah.
accidents. And there's a lot of, and I don't want to say all young people, but it's not something we teach. Like, they get taught when they go get their driver's license and things like that.
Mm,
So a
mm.
lot of young drivers don't actually realize that if there's power lines over their car, they should stay in the car, or that if we're the
Good.
bystander, we need to stay 10 meters back. So looking for things like that, looking for if the car's electric or not. People don't know that electric vehicle, or like some people don't know that electric vehicles have the EV symbol on the number plate. That's something they'll get asked if they're ever making the triple O call at a roadside
What has it got?
accident.
Sorry, Leah? I
Oh,
don't know.
on the number plate, right in the
Yeah.
center, there's a little triangle, blue triangle that'll say EV, or if it's hybrid, HEV.
Oh, okay. I didn't
You,
know
you,
that.
you can have a look for it now.
I will. I will. And so what's the difference in that when you're responding, what impact does that have?
It's more just so people are aware where to look, because it's something, if they're ever making the triple O call at a roadside accident, that the triple O operator will ask. because sometimes they need to bring different, like, it's more for the fire brigade. So
Oh,
knowing
okay.
what things
Yeah.
that they might need to bring. So, yeah, they'll ask if there's any electric vehicles. And so some people are like, "How do I tell?" Not knowing that
Mm,
that's there on the number plate.
mm. Oh, wow. See, learned that today. So, how can communities and organisations get involved or even request a workshop?
Yeah, so all our public workshops go up on our website. So if
Right.
people like Google First Minutes Matter, they will find the webpage and you can look for a workshop. So if you just wanted to personally come along to one, you can see if
Mhm.
there's one in your region. But if there's not one in your region, you can there's a section there that you can say request a workshop. You could be an individual that thinks, I've never seen one in my town. I'd love to have one. We can do that. Or if it's a group or a company, like it might be a sporting club, like I said, a business,
Yeah.
a property, it really doesn't matter if they have 10 or 15 people that they think, oh, I'd love to have one of those at our club,
Mhm.
business,
Mm.
property. They can put in an expression of interest on that webpage as well. And then we'll get back to them and organise that for them.
And as you say, it's absolutely free.
Yeah.
So, what are the future goals for First Minutes Matter? Because you've got some exciting changes happening within the first, or adapting to the changing, demographics and changing world we're living in. So, what are some of the future goals for that for the First Minutes Matter program?
Yeah, so we're sort of excited. We're developing it at the moment and hope to have it ready
Mhm.
for the new year. But like I said, the public course that people come to is fairly general and covers a broad range of topics.
Yeah.
However, we're starting to develop what we call just streams, so it'll be more specific at certain people. So we're developing ones that we're looking at one for young children, so young children and infants. So it might be just like a 2-hour course where we can go into like mothers groups and again for free, but go into mothers groups and do things like choking, infant CPR,
Wow.
febrile convulsions, and then looking and also talking to them about how to recognize a sick child. So it's skills that we used to learn. I remember learning when I was pregnant, that we
Mhm.
used to do it in antenatal classes and things, but they don't really offer these things for people anymore unless you go do a
Yeah.
paid kind of course.
Mm.
So there's a real deficit there. There's a real gap in a lot of young mums' knowledge and young dads' knowledge. So we're looking at trying to do something specific for infants and young children.
Mm. So
We're
good.
looking at doing a stream, like, also for older people that might be they often wanna know more about the strokes and the falls and things that are probably more relevant to what will
Mm.
happen to them, and they're slightly more concerned with different things, if they're on certain medications. So we're trying to
Mm.
do things like that. But we're also have been building specific topics
Right.
for actual businesses. So like if a business comes to us and say falling from heights, like if it's construction or something and falling from heights is a real risk for them. Well, then we can add that topic into their course and it might be swapped out with something else. They might say, I don't need all of these things. I want these three. Plus also, can you do fall from heights?
Mm.
So, and that's the other thing for businesses, I suppose, is our standard course. Like if you come to a standard public course, it's 6 hours.
Mm.
However, it doesn't need to be that. Like when we came to you, I think it was 4.
Mm.
We can do shorter courses to try and match a business's need. And so if a business says, I've got 4 hours, these are the topics we'd like to cover, we can match something into that as well.
Yeah. So this is free, and this is an amazing, amazing workshop that I think every person in Queensland should be doing. How is it funded?
Yeah, so we're really lucky that basically there's lots of different ways it's funded.
Yeah.
Some ways it is just community donations. So some people that are donating just general public
Yeah.
will donate so that way we can run the First Minutes Matter program.
Right.
We get some grants. So some big businesses and energy companies have grant money that we're able to access to help fund the course. And other times it's businesses that link in with us and we'll often have gone and done a course
Mm.
maybe
Mm.
for them and then they'll say, actually, this is a great program. We need to help support you so that you can get more courses out into the community, and then they might make like an annual donation or an annual grant to us. So it is all community funded
That's
in
amazing.
multiple different ways.
Mm. And I can't think of a better cause, really. I mean, what you're doing is just so necessary in this day and age, probably always was, but more so in this day and age, because our chances of coming across medical emergencies are so much greater now than they ever were. So this episode to me is about empowering people to respond to emergencies. So whether you're hiking, fishing, camping, swimming or driving, it's something that you should be taking part in. But if you'd like to become involved, whether attending or hosting or even sponsoring the First Minutes Matter, we'll leave our contacts below. But as you also mentioned, they can also go to the First Minutes Matter webpage and download from there and get the information, can't they? So any last words of wisdom, Leah, for any of us out there?
I think what we just tell everyone is that, people are time poor and we understand that.
Yeah.
But even if your business wants a shorter course that's like 3 or 4 hours,
Yeah.
or you come to a full course for 6 hours, it really is a short amount of time in our whole life, and that could be the difference between you having the skills to save somebody, and that might be a complete stranger or it could be your loved one. And if you're ever in the situation, because unfortunately I've been like in hospitals where people have come in, people haven't had great outcomes and families have had to live with that, that guilt of not knowing what to do. So, and I think that's what really draws me to this course. So spend a few hours, come and feel like you have the knowledge, you have the empowerment to make a real difference if something ever happens.
And that what you've done is you've tried your hardest to support a person in need when they have that need as well. I think it's really important. So thank you, Leah. We're so fortunate to have people like yourselves and your team and LifeFlight out there supporting us, looking after us and being there when we need them. It's so important. So thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Thanks for listening today. For a complete list of podcast episodes and transcripts, go to rdagoldcoast.org.au/podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn or Twitter.